So let's get into Kunal's origin story in his business.
Right.
The guy does imports from Japan. We have here, what's the name of the company, man?
Arneja Trading. So Arneja is my last name.
Okay.
And trading, of course, because we're looking to get into general import-export and a few other things as well.
So what I'll do is I'll put a link to his contact digits in the description of the video. Check it out if you want to reach out to him. But can you give us, I don't know, let's say like 3 or 4 main tips that people want to consider if they're going to import a car from Japan, whether they want to do it themselves or with a guy like you?
So one main thing is paper trail. That's very big. You'll find a lot of accident history cars coming into the country, and Japan does keep a track of all this. So you can easily go ahead online. I think there's a company called Jumvea, and you can give them the VIN, and they'll search back and actually give you if there was any auction history where you can see if it was an accident car, and you'll be able to find things like owner history and the amount of times it's exchanged hands, dealerships that had it, etc. So having a paper trail is very big. I mean, I'd say about 60% of the cars in Canada have come in either in really poor quality or as accident history, and it's easy to hide when you just polish it up and take pictures and export it.
Is that something that you kind of pull through like a Japanese equivalent Carfax, or
exactly?
What's that called?
So yeah, it's called the organization that gives it is called Jumvea.
Okay.
And all these cars go through this thing called a shaken inspection, so it's very much like our safety standards test. They have to do it every other year for old cars. So you can get all that history from these cars and find whether the mileage is authentic. A lot of the times people change to Nismo gauges, for example, and the mileage is trump then if they don't keep a paper trail for it.
Yeah, and these are older cars, so it's easier to wind back speedos and things like that. It's not like newer cars where it's a lot more difficult.
Exactly.
All right, so give us another trinket.
So for sure, another one would be to deal with an importer. I'm not being biased when I say that. It's just because really your only point of contact would be someone in Japan, and for someone that works a full-time job, they just got 20-25 grand to spend, the last thing they want to do is worry about keeping in touch with someone in Japan in the middle of the night, trying to figure things out, siphoning through cars, seeing which one's good. I mean, people that act as an importer like myself, we do all that work for them. So that allows a quality assured method where you have someone that's familiar with the auctions. So I'd certainly suggest dealing with an importer. When it comes to dealerships, you'll find a lot of Japanese cars sitting on the lot. Brampton, Mississauga have a ton of dealer lots sitting everywhere. You'll see Skylines just littered all over the place. It kind of reverts back to the first point where you should always try to ask for the Japan history.
Right.
It's very easy to hide it. So one thing to do is when you look at these dealer cars, they might seem like it's at an appealing price, but when you work backwards and you see what they potentially bought the car for in Japan, I mean, there's not really any good quality you can afford with that budget. So.
Yeah. Okay. Let me throw a little trinket in there for you as well, because I had spoken to somebody, I don't know, it was like 8 or 10 years ago when I was looking at importing a Ferrari Testarossa from Japan.
Nice.
It had just tripped over the 15-year mark, so basically the rule is if it's 15 years or older, you can bring it in with a lot less hassle, right?
Right.
What's the story behind the 15-year line in the sand? What's that all about?
I believe that is the rule, and that works for just about every car. I know in the US you can do some compliance things as we spoke about. In Canada, I don't think you can do that. So 15 years is the rule if you want to get a foreign market car.
Right.
And it's from the month of production. So if something was built in April 2001, for example, then it was legal this year in April of 2016.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
And the other thing they told me, and I don't know if this is true or not, so maybe you can help clarify the story, but I was told that emissions and the Japanese government is very, very tight on motor production, amount of miles, and basically what the guy said is after a certain amount of miles, I guess I was led to believe like 60 to 70,000 miles, they want the cars off the road.
Yes, exactly.
So like, do most of these cars have almost exactly 60, 70,000 miles on them when they come into North America, or how does that work? So
there's really a huge abundance of cars that come in that are low mileage, under 100,000 kilometers.
Okay.
So what they have here is that it's a perfect storm for us, really, because these cars get taxed heavily, and like I said, you have to go for these shaken inspections every 2 years. So really, you're going through a safety standards, and you have to change every single component. So rather than a straight up tax, they simply make it very expensive to own one of these cars and have it roadworthy.
So it's easier for the owners just to put it up for auction and just get rid of it.
Exactly, just get rid of it or keep it as something like a track car, which is why
there's an off-road car.
There's such a huge track culture in Japan for that purpose.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, give the viewers one more trinket, one more little nugget of advice, without giving away the secret sauce.
Right. Let's see. So one more than that. Really, it's about just getting a really good quality car and knowing exactly what you want.
Are there certain cars that you want to stay away from and more to lean towards?
You know what? Not that you wouldn't do that here already. Something like a high mileage Subaru or an RX-7, for example. I mean, an RX-7 FD with a rotary engine, a lot of people say they're unreliable, and they go for pennies in auction. And it's very appealing because the chassis is designed so well. It's a phenomenal car. But cars like that I would be very worried about. I've heard one RX-7 owner mention to me that it's better to take on the rebuild yourself rather than take on
a lot of guys put the Corvette motors in them now. They'll bring an RX-7 and they'll do like an LT1 swap or something.
If you have a plan like that, importing an RX-7 from Japan is a great idea because you can get them for very cheap, especially if the engine isn't something you're talking about.
Got it.
So really, aside from that, I mean, your typical Japanese cars, your STIs, your older Evos, Skylines, Supras, they're all fantastic chassis to get into. I mean, there's not much to be said about those, aside from them being great cars. There's a lot of lower trim models for, you know, something like a Supra, for example. Right now, a twin turbo example fetches over 30K
really?
easily.
Okay.
And in the US, I mean, they're going for 40K US for the left-hand drive.
Okay,
models.
so quick rundown. Let's talk about the Supras. What do they go for?
So the SZ
30K.
model, SZ auto model is about 10 to 11 grand all in, said and done. You have the SZ 5 speeds going for around 12, 13 grand. There's the non-turbo 6 speeds, come with the same 6 speed as the twin turbo version. Those go for about 15 grand. I just had a really nice one arrive here actually a couple weeks ago.
Okay. What else is popular?
You have Skylines, of course.
Skylines, yeah.
The R32 prices have gone up quite a bit, but they're starting at about 20 grand now. R33 is at about 25.
Are these appreciating assets? Like, are people buying them and holding them?
They are. So my R33 in particular, I mean, since the time I bought it, it's probably gone up about 15 grand at this point.
Okay.
And
good purchase.
Once the US market gets a hold of them, they're going to be going up quite a bit more.
And at what point can the US bring these in?
So we have the 15-year rule and they have the 25-year rule.
Oh shit,
So
they got fucked.
They're 10 years behind us. We kind of get fucked on the taxes side because they only pay about 2.5% to import.
Okay.
And as Canadians, we pay our HST in some cases if you're in Ontario, along with 6.1% duty.
Got it.
So we're at
still fairly cheap though.
Still fairly cheap.
Yeah.
It is.
All right, cool. All right, so we'll leave it at that.
Sure.
Where can people find you if they want to get more information on bringing a car into Canada? Do you do cars in the US or just Canada?
I do cars in the US as well, mainly doing the direct export. So I help people buy an auction, and I export directly to them and take care of all the customs.
All right, so where do they find you at, bro?
So you can find me out on my website, arnejatrading.com. You can also find me on Facebook, .com/Arneja Trading. You can reach me by phone number 647-248-9752. And really, I'm all over the city. So if you ever want to meet me for a coffee and pick my brain about some Japanese cars and the costs involved, I'm happy to sit down with you and do that.
All right, thanks, man. Peace. Appreciate you, meeting up with me today. Let me drive your goat and telling us a little bit of insight on what these things are all about and how to get them in.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much.